Hey, what's up, guys? This is the Sales Samurai, and we are here for the Sales Samurai Talk Show. So basically, this show is about selling, and when I mean selling for businesses. I'm actually come from a sales background, been selling a lot of different solutions, everything from software to the office products industry. But yeah, I dedicated this show because I'm really passionate about selling and wanted to be able to create a show for people who really want to. Selling is not just a job; it's a lifestyle, and this is sort of the name of this first episode introducing that concept. But really want to improve themselves and want to discuss selling and how to get better at it. And, are really just interested in that process. So ultimately, the show is targeted for the sales professional. You could be working for a company selling various products and want some better ideas on how to sell better or to make your position more enjoyable. You could be at the management level, whether it be a sales manager or director of sales, getting some ideas on some strategy and motivation on how you can motivate your people. Or you could be in your own business. You could be a consultant. You could be running a small business, just starting a business here. And, ultimately for a business, you need to either be able to sell or find someone who can sell. So, and finally, you just might be interested because sales is something that you're curious about and you feel that it might better your life. I love talking about sales and the art of selling. To me, I see it as an art because I'm also a martial artist, and I've always approached sales, learning a specific endeavor, and it was not something that came naturally to me. And on that basis, it's considered an art. And when I talk to a lot of people about selling, they're always fascinated about it. It's something that people always want to know how to do better, even if they're in sales or they're not in sales, because life is a bit of a sales process. It's about convincing people and being able to get people on your side and really be able to persuade them. So that's a life principle. It's not just specific to business selling, whether it's a profession or not. If you're in other professions, you have to sell your ideas internally to other departments and work with them. So it's always it's always a key skill. So in terms of who I am, as I mentioned, my background, I am a sales professional. And have been selling for a number of years, but I actually started in IT. Actually, I started my career in IT. I was a computer programmer, and I actually had my ideas about what selling was about. And like a lot of people, I actually used to say I can't sell, and I had my ideas of what salespeople were, and most of it was bad. I considered them pretty unethical people most of the time, not really actually understanding the product or service, would often lie to get their way. That was my impression of what a salesperson was. And as I've developed in the profession of sales, I realized that's actually what the example of a bad salesperson is. So eventually in IT, the market, this was back in the early 2000s, the market was actually not so great, just coming off the dot-com bubble. I actually had to learn how to sell. I eventually was going from contract to contract, and between contracts I had to find work. So on that basis there, I started to learning how to cold call and learning how to find some of my own contracts. And then I started actually really realizing this is a tangible skill and it's something I can be good at, and it's actually a lot more fun and a lot more enlightening than I thought. And I, again, approached it as an intellectual pursuit. It wasn't just about selling, about making money. It was about the whole process that and we'll talk a little bit more about this in this episode of how I really embrace sales as a lifestyle, and it's one of the best things that I've done, not just financially, but just from the point of view of just changing my life and how I interact with people. So having said that, then I entered the sales profession in the last 10 plus years. Sold various products and services, everything from copiers, which is one of the toughest industries, some people would say, office products, technology, enterprise software solutions. So, I've been quite across the board with different things. And I realize in this time it's something that I still continue to improve upon, even though, I am fairly seasoned, and there's something I still enjoy learning. So, the episode here is not just about, not just about myself. I'm going to later on bring on different speakers. We're going to talk about different topics, everything from starting from the basics. Some people might not be aware of the basics, like cold calling, doing presentations, closing, and then looking at some advanced techniques like coming back to a lost deal, getting past a decision maker that you don't have personal contact with. I think a lot of material covers sort of the basic stuff, but I was always interested on, especially when I go to sales training, they'd always teach the basic stuff, but what about some of the areas that you have sticking points? What about the areas that can be sort of tough situations to deal with? So basically, we're going to be talking about different aspects. So first a little while, I'm probably going to be going through the basics myself, and then bringing on different speakers that we can interview and help give you some ideas once the foundation is covered. So talking about this first episode here, and this is going to be pretty short because it's really just an introduction. We're talking about how sales is a lifestyle. So in my journey in sales, really it became something out of necessity that I needed to do. I needed to learn it, and and I really took it as sort of almost a spiritual path, a path to be a better person. One thing I was always motivated about was I always liked studying. Generally, I was good with people. I was more of a talker than a listener. And I think most salespeople have the capacity to talk, but listening is actually pretty much the key skill in sales that I've learned, and that's made me a better person. Having said that, if you're a quiet person, some people say, I'm not really a talkative person. A quiet person can actually do quite well in sales because they tend to have better listening skills. But I embraced it as a challenge because I realized that in a lot of areas in my life, not just in sales, whether it be relationships, with my friendships, I was coming up short on the basis of not being able to sell my ideas. And, this was something that would improve my life. So I started actually with my first book was Sales for Dummies. Sales for Dummies, and that's basically for the Dummies edition. And any subject I study, I actually basically look at the For Dummies series first. It's a great place to start off on just sort of laying the foundation work. And I really sort of broke down the different processes of sales here. So just a note here, I'm going to recommend some books here as a talk. You can actually find any of these books on my website here at sales, SALES webs, WEBZ .link/books. And so you have some of my recommended readings there. And those are all affiliate links, so you're doing me a favor, of course. I do get a commission if you purchase it through those links, but definitely I'd appreciate it if you did. You don't have to go through those respective links, but it sort of helps support the show and keep it going, knowing that there's obviously something that's sponsoring it here. So anyways, that's sales.webs, WEBZ.link/books. You can find any recommended readings here. So Sales for Dummy, that was a good good starting point for selling. It really sort of taught me the basics and broke it down, and really made me understand that selling is a discipline. It's not just something that's just a random. People would say whether you have it. Some people have it, and some people don't. But it actually was a tangible skill that can be broken down. It just seems that when people who are good at it, there are some people who are natural at it to a certain degree. but really comes down to most people actually have to work at it. Areas where it can be more natural. So my background is actually more in business to business sales. I didn't do a lot of business to customer selling. So I think, and this is my opinion only, that I think, with business to customer, you tend to find people who are a little bit more quote unquote naturals at selling, because it's not as much process oriented versus emotionally oriented. And that's something I could learn a little bit more about, because my selling style that I've learned about is more about, there's definitely emotions involved, but it's more about breaking down the logic and going to an organization and presenting how this will benefit them, either make money or save money. But ultimately, everything does come down to emotions. But I think with business to customer, retail environments, those type of things, you tend to have more naturals. But when you get into the business to business environment, you need to be most of the time very savvy and very disciplined in your approach. You're usually dealing with pretty sophisticated people, and the higher up you get on the scale there, you have to have a lot of methodology. So even if you have that natural approach, it needs to be tempered and worked on in some sort of way. Anyways, I digress there. So, that sort of Sales for Dummies laid the foundation for me as my secondary book. Not directly sales related, but it's actually very much popular with a lot of sales people is NLP. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it's actually the science of how the brain works, and it helps with being able to manage your emotional state. And I think that was key, because one of the things that stops people from sales is that they can't really take the rejection. You do receive a lot of rejection, and NLP had a lot of good things about managing your emotional state. And one of the most popular proponents of NLP was actually Anthony Robbins. A lot of people know him from the late night infomercials and have a bad impression of him based on just the fact that he was on a late night TV back in the, I think it was early 90s and late 80s there. But he has a lot of great things to say, and he broke NLP down into a much more user-friendly version than the scholastic version of NLP. And there was tremendous value in that, in reading his book, Unlimited Power. I had actually stumbled upon Unlimited Power at a bargain books bin and picked it up. And I picked it up actually more to just to laugh at it. One thing is I love to read. I still love to read. And I want to pick it up to sort of say, it's cheap, first of all, but it was more of a joke than anything else. And I actually really found it fascinating. I actually really found some of the concepts in it much more interesting than what it would initially seem like, because I had my impressions of the late night talk show of Anthony Robbins and whatnot, and realized, hey, there's actually a lot of value on that. One of the key things that I think just even reading Unlimited Power is that in terms of rejection, which is one of the key things that holds people back with sales, is that there was the statement that people are not rejecting you, they're rejecting your idea at that time, right? And so we often take things personally, and that same person at a different time might accept your idea, or they might accept a variation of your idea, but we often take things personally. We always get hurt, and a lot of people, very few people sort of naturally don't feel personally rejected. Some people have that talent, but most of us, we tend to get very hurt by and then get defensive when people do not seem to accept our ideas. So I mean that sort of concept in itself of realizing that it's not me that's being rejected, but my ideas getting rejected, that I think was an empowering statement, along with a lot of other NLP techniques such as anchoring, which is basically being able to bring up an emotional state that you've trained in yourself, controlling your breathing, reframing your questions, like when you lose a business deal, to be able to always focus on the positive and what was the positive value, asking some of those positive questions, and definitely the power of questions. I mean, the power of questions questions that I ask people and questions that I ask myself, because questions is how we think, and basically when I say that, you've probably been thinking, is that true or not? That's a question in your head, right? So we think based on questions. That's how, what triggers our thoughts. So, asking good questions, asking yourself good questions, make sure your brain is being led in the right way, making the other person's brain is being led in the right way by asking the good questions instead of giving them the answer. Ask them the question and lead them to those conclusions. And then I also got into some other books, Spin Selling, which definitely laid out a more modern methodology of modern at the time when I was getting into selling, of selling and being able to break down selling into more of a consultative approach. And Zig Ziglar was even, he's a little bit old school, but still fantastic. But yeah, that laid down the foundation with that. So, in terms of selling as a lifestyle, every day, sales can be a tough gig. I mean, depending on what type of role that you have. But, I started off in the trenches and built my way up into more senior roles there. But, some people, have it easier than others, and depending on which market they start off with. But, for me, even going into the copier market in the early stage of my career, that, some people haven't even entered that, but they say if you can sell copiers, you can pretty much sell anything. It's, was pretty much a declining product and something that was very extremely competitive, and that really cut my teeth in terms of selling. But what motivated me is that, I realized this is not just selling. I'm just, I am really bettering myself in so many different ways, and that's exactly what has happened. I mean, not only, as I mentioned, financially have I grown and profited, which is one of the main motivations that people get into sales, is that, depending on your role, you can have, unlimited cap in some roles, and, financially do extremely well, make as much as an executive, and have more freedom as a result. So, finances definitely was a motivation, but, also the other aspects, that wouldn't come immediately. I knew that would come over time. But just, my relations with people has grown so much more. The biggest thing on the aspect of taking things personal, really, I find I can turn over emotions a lot better in terms of how I feel, of not taking things personal from my friends and family and people who are close to me, or even strangers, and making sure I'm always every day focusing on the positive, managing my state, and and just being able to understand and empathize with people. This is something that came from Anthony Robbins, was that the secret to getting more of what you want is giving people, giving, right? So really, instead of being focused on how can I get from people, how can I offer them value, right? And being able to offer that value to be able to get something back. So, I think in terms of just my daily life, everything had really improved from getting into sales. That just even from just a happiness level, finances taken out of the equation, I could deal with people so much more better, be a lot more relaxed, not hold grudges. And it was almost a spiritual process in a way. That's what I think. Sales ultimately is a business of people and understanding people, and understanding people means understanding yourself, and also understanding other people and how to communicate with them. All right. So, I definitely found that it expanded my life in so many different ways, and made me overall just a happier person, just because I could be able to work with people so much more, ask questions that I would have otherwise been afraid of, and areas to explore, and also realize that too, that again, it's just the idea of people rejecting, and not you. And the proof of the pudding of that was, I noticed a lot of deals that I'd win, and I just see how the relationship would expand. I'd go to approach a prospective customer, and whether it be cold calling them, and they might be cold to me at first and say, we already have a vendor, and we're not interested, and then going from that to winning them as a customer, and then managing that account, and then all of a sudden that's us almost being like friends, and not just the power of the relationships, of being able to show people truly who I was as a professional, and being able to take care of their business, and remembering their starting point and how cold they were. I mean, regardless of the commission behind that, it just was such an empowering feeling of being able to really build those connections with people, right? And that just made me so pretty motivated every day to always continue to sell and work with people. But end of the day, sales is like I said, it's a process. It's not just a process that is done in professional selling. You do it in every career, any career choice that you have. It's a process of persuasion. So whether you're in product management, even a programmer like I was, you need to communicate your ideas and get people on board with your ideas. And it's a process of persuasion and the way of doing that and looking at the science behind that. So, even finding a potential mate is a sales process. Another key process is job interviews. I know a lot of people with the economy are out of the job, and going into sales definitely even made me better at interviewing for positions. That's actually going to be our next topic. I mean, because if you're not in the sales profession, you might be thinking, how do I get into it? So this might be a little bit rudimentary for some people, but I think it's something that everyone can always improve upon. Is how is the job interview process, sales process, actually quite parallel. It's very very similar. Some of the skills that you use in sales can help you get a job, whatever that job is, and how to conduct yourself. So there's a lot of parallels in sales. It's a life skill. It's just not something that you do for in professional selling or in business. And I think I mentioned before, so I call myself the sales samurai because it's all about the discipline and the art of selling. But I'm a martial artist, and I've always approached sales like the martial arts. It was the discipline that I enjoyed studying the same way I studied martial arts. You just humbly listen, learn from other people, and continue to work at different aspects of your game. Of your process and being able to persuade people, and the end result is important, but you can't always win, and same thing with martial arts. You can't always win every fight, every battle, but you become a student of the process, right? And it was that same sort of attitude that I approach with selling that took me from being a fairly introverted IT person to someone who's done relatively well with sales. So it is a process, and I consider it to be an art. So any case, this episode is just meant to be an introduction. The next episode we're going to be talking about on the rudimentary, looking at selling and getting a job. Again, you might be just trying to enter the sales profession, or you might be in sales and looking for a better position. Maybe you want to expand internally to a more senior level position. You're going from just a junior account manager to more an executive level salesperson, or from an executive level salesperson more to a sales director or sales manager role, or you might be looking to jump ship. Right, so how to apply some of your selling skills in terms of getting a job, and then we'll be looking at some other aspects like being able to generate leads from cold calls, to even generate leads from utilizing some more modern methods, using the internet, everything from webinars to emails to LinkedIn, etc. So, but we're going to start off from the basics here of basically drawing the parallels from sales and getting a job interview, doing it and doing that well. So, anyways, I hope to see you on the next episode. This is the sales samurai. I know there's other people that will claim to be the sales samurai. I am not the one and only sales samurai, but I'm the one who's claiming the title for today. But I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. See ya.